Yes. Dear conference participants and delegates, we are from the Quilt Factory and we are here to present the 8th 2010 Memorial Quilt, which was created this week in the Global Village. We are very proud that so many of you joined our project. More panels were made this week than we ever expected. Only a quarter of them are on display here. But finally, we count 124 panels. Thank you so much for creating such impressive panels with the names of those who have lost their lives to HIV/AIDS. Thank you. Thank you for your empathy and your creativity. Looking at your wonderful artwork on the panels, we feel your love for those who have lost. And somehow, they are among us now. Sometimes, the little things we do are the most important. Thanks for keeping the memory alive and take care of yourselves.
There should be no retreat. Fun days. We fully agree.
We agree.
Over the last year, the same leaders had absolutely no problem finding money on a moment's notice to bail out their corporate friends, the greedy Wall Street bankers, and yet when it comes to global health, the purse is always empty.
We will be able, united, to reach main goals on this issue. And we do not wait 10 years and not 5 years, but will start tomorrow.
The Red Ribbon Award honors and celebrates 25 community-based organizations implementing successful and sustainable programs that reduce the spread and impact of AIDS.
I'm an endangered species.
all. Thank you so much.
You and me continue to be activists and to mobilize and organize those around us in this noble fight to save life.
We have to remind ourselves that more of the same is not good enough. Yeah, we've made progress on prevention, but we don't do very much on it. And we know the AIDS epidemic won't end with the treatment options we have now. It will only end when we stop new infections and no one dies before their time.
I'm optimistic about the work going on scientifically, both with tools for prevention and also eventually the ultimate tool, the vaccine.
It's clear, it's colorless, it's odorless, it's almost tasteless, and you can just squirt some in your hand and look at it. It's mostly water.
It fulfills an extraordinary need, a need in the sense of science and public health and prevention, but also a need from a sociological standpoint for a group of people who for so long have had really very little opportunity to determine their own fate, namely women, particularly women in the developing world.
Hello.
No to criminalization. Tonight is the night we will remember, is the night which call all of us for only one cause, is the respect of the human rights. Annie Lennox.
Like the Durban Declaration, led to access to HIV treatment for many who needed it, and culminated in the call for universal access by the UN General Assembly. This conference and the Vienna Declaration must be the call to end the war on drug users.
States have the responsibility to respect, protect, and fulfill the full range of human rights of all people. And all people means everyone. Sex workers, drug users, lesbian women, gay men, transgender people, prisoners, people living with HIV. And just to restate the obvious, which is often not very obvious in some of our work, women are people and they are human.
Dear friends, doom and gloom have been the order of the day as the global recession has spread a blanket of hardship over much of the world. Remarkably, a ray of hope and sunshine has come from an unexpected quarter: HIV/AIDS. There is no cure yet. There is no vaccine yet, but treatment is available. HIV is treatable. It can be managed. Lives can be saved. Children need not be orphans. Parents can continue to provide for their families. The hopelessness of the past can be transformed into hope for the future. At the end of this 18th World International Conference in beautiful Vienna, this is the message we will remember from AIDS 2010. For this transformation to become a reality, it is not enough for treatment to be available. It must be accessible. Universal access was the goal of 2010. We also know now that those on treatment have less HIV circulating in their systems and are less likely to pass it on. This has potential to lower rates of HIV transmission across the world. To deny treatment is to deny life itself. I commend those leaders who have recognized that denial of treatment is a denial of the human right to life. Africa bears the brunt of the HIV burden. We need our leaders to make their resources count in the fight against HIV. The 5.5 million precious lives still in need of treatment in poor countries need help. The HIV issue is a human rights issue. HIV prevention, treatment, care and support are a human rights priority, as much a challenge for leadership as it is for vulnerable communities. But accessible treatment can overcome the stigma that has obsessed our communities far too long. Accessible treatment allows for improved health management, not only of services to those infected with HIV, but of all health services. There are great possibilities. Antiretroviral therapy is a tremendous breakthrough, and we also know how to prevent HIV effectively with more and better prevention tools expected in the future. Yet, at this moment of great promise, the international community has yet to live up to its commitment to fund fully universal access. Now is the time to invest resources into healthcare, into HIV research, into training and health management. Our leaders, especially in Africa, have a key role to play not only in mobilizing limited resources creatively, but in influencing attitudes, laws, and philosophies that are accepting of all God's children. A healthy nation is a prosperous nation. God bless you.
We must stand up and fight AIDS now. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, but now.
Human rights, right here, right now.
We came out here tonight to march in support of human rights to those living with HIV/AIDS.
Because we want human rights now than ever. Rights, especially rights for women, should be recognized as rights for all humans.
Because I care. Because we all care.
Because right to treatment is right to life.
I care passionately about the people, not just about the science. So I think it's really important to be here.
I've lost friends to the illness, and it's time to just stop. You know, enough is enough. We have a saying in America, what would Jesus do? And Jesus would heal the sick. So let's just get busy and let's do what's right.
It's a human right to have treatment.
We have the knowledge to stop AIDS, and that's why I'm here today. We need money to fund the fund.
Promote harm reduction, prevent HIV! Promote harm reduction, prevent HIV!
We're here to defend human rights of people living with HIV and AIDS, human rights of sexual minorities, human rights of prisoners, human rights of drug users, sex workers, and migrants.
We are positive both. We are married in Argentina. We are the first married in Argentina and in Latin America. We are fighting for human rights now. Treatment, condoms, prevention, all.
I come here as an activist because I'm fighting for LGBT rights in Uganda, in Africa, and I'm proud that we're expressing our voice for the voiceless in this community.
Stop treatment interruptions in Russia!
Living with HIV since 1986. This is an official invitation for everybody here to join me in Southeast DC the summer of 2012 to make sure that we can send a direct message to President Obama and the rest of the U.S. government, as well as everyone around the world, that this is what it takes to end the epidemic. We need the urgency and the power and the emotion and the energy of people living with the epidemic, living with HIV, fighting against the racism and the stigma and the homophobia and the sexism that allows the epidemic to persist. So I will come here this time. I will be in DC in 2012 until we end the epidemic, because we don't want to be here in 2031.
We welcome you to the closing session of the 18th International AIDS Conference. We hope you have enjoyed many opportunities for dialogue and networking to renew your commitment to the important work that you do each day. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Bridget Schmidt, local conference co-chair of AIDS 2010.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sadly, this is the last session of the 18th International AIDS Conference. Over 19,300 people from 193 countries have participated in AIDS 2010, with many more joining in activities in the global village. Noteworthy, about 500 people from the Russian Federation participated in this conference, and so the Russian Federation is under the top 10. Together, we attended 248 sessions, reviewed more than 10,000 abstracts, and communicated with 12,325 of our closest friends on Facebook. When we look back on Vienna, what will we remember? First, I hope you will recall having enjoyed your stay in Vienna. We had a strong program, hot weather, but at times only weak air condition in the session rooms. Still, it was an energetic conference based on our shared commitment to universal access to HIV prevention, treatment, care and support by 2015. We also leave Vienna with a new resolve to hold our political leaders accountable for the commitments they have made to universal access. A key theme of the conference has been the critical importance of human rights in the response to AIDS. The memory of the Human Rights March, with thousands of us, along with Annie Lennox, calling for the basic dignity to live our lives safe and free of discrimination, will remain with me, as I'm sure it will with you too. The AIDS 2000 conference in Durban, South Africa, will always be remembered as the moment when the world realized that it is our collective responsibility to make sure the benefits of life-saving HIV treatments to everyone, regardless of where we live. The Vienna Conference will be remembered as the dawn of a new era in South Africa, reflected in the stirring remarks of Deputy President Motlanthe and Minister Motsoaledi. Together, we also send a loud message that people who use drugs should not be criminalized, that they deserve access to treatment and proven prevention strategies. We emphasized again how prevention is more than safer sex, that it also includes structural changes to reduce vulnerability. Michel Sidibe spoke of the necessity of a prevention revolution. While together in Vienna, we heard about the exciting results of the Caprice microbicides trial, which is definitely a part of that revolution. Hopefully soon, we will have a practical and effective HIV prevention tool that puts women in charge, independent of their partners. It was a It was a great conference, filled with glorious sunshine. However, for many of us, there was also a bit of a looming shadow called Austria and the Global Fund. This cloud appears willing to disappear. On this point, I would like to report on a quite promising informal conversation I had yesterday. In this conversation, I was told that AIDS 2010 has had an important impact on the Austrian government's understanding of the epidemic and its role. Based on the new insights gained this week, there are promising signs and some indications that Austria might make a new contribution in the future. I know I speak on behalf of all Austrians here today when I say that we look forward to this development and are prepared to take whatever steps are needed to make this a reality. I hope you all will leave here with as much hope as I have, and that we can continue our work as scientists and advocates to convert into reality the ideas we have developed and exchanged this week in Vienna. At the end, I would like to thank AIDS 2010 secretariats for all of their hard work this week, as well as the 770 volunteers who have helped to make this meeting such a success. I would also like to thank Julio and the other members of the Conference Coordinating Committee, as well as the members of the Scientific Program Committee, Community Program Committee and Leadership Program Committee. Many thanks also to all local partners and to the Secretariat of the Austrian AIDS Society. Last but not least, I would like to thank my family for their support and understanding, and thank you to all of you for attending the 18th International AIDS Conference. Have a safe trip home. Thank you and goodbye.
Could Kelly Dorsey come to the front, please? We have found your passport. On behalf of the conference co-organizers, we would like to welcome Ms. Patricia Perez, Chair of the International Steering Committee of the International Community of Women Living with HIV/AIDS, to the stage.
Okay. Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon, everyone. Agradecer la presencia de todos ustedes aquí. Sé que estos días han sido complejos y con mucho trabajo.
I'd like to thank the presence of everyone here. I know that these past few days have been complex and difficult.
Y desde la Comunidad Internacional de Mujeres Viviendo con VIH-Sida queremos hacerles algunos comentarios y unas reflexiones.
And from the international community of women living with HIV and AIDS, we'd like to share some reflections, make some comments.
Esta conferencia ha logrado destacar avances en materia de microbicidas y la importancia del tratamiento como prevención.
This conference has highlighted advances in connection with microbicides and the relevance of treatment as prevention.
Asimismo, volvió a diagnosticar falencias ya encontradas en otras conferencias.
Likewise, it has diagnosed failures that were already identified in previous conferences.
A lo largo de esta semana en la hermosa Viena, se evidenció la falta de recursos destinados al sector del SIDA.
Throughout this week in beautiful Vienna, the lack of resources allocated to the AIDS sector has been evidenced.
La crisis mundial destacó aún más los recortes de los presupuestos destinados a salud. En este mismo escenario, en la apertura se oyeron voces de dirigentes sociales exigiendo respuestas urgentes para el financiamiento del sector.
The global crisis has increasingly reduced the budgets for health. On this same stage, during the opening session, we heard the voices of social leaders demanding urgent responses to fund the sector.
Entonces, ¿dónde podemos encontrar dinero para detener la epidemia?
So, where can we find money to stop the epidemic?
Nosotras, desde ICW Global, queremos compartir con ustedes nuestras ideas.
From ICW, we want to share our ideas.
Busquemos dinero para detener la epidemia en los recursos que destinan los estados para comprar armas.
Let's look for money to stop the epidemic among the resources that nations allocate to buying weapons.
Por ejemplo, en la región de América Latina, al finalizar este año se habrán gastado o se habrán malgastado $60 millones en armamentos. Esto nos lo informó el expresidente de Costa Rica, don Oscar Arias, cuando lo convocamos para que se sumara a la campaña Más Paz Menos SIDA.
For instance, $60 billion will be wasted or wrongly spent in armaments in Latin America by the end of the year, according to what Oscar Arias, former president of Costa Rica, told us when we asked him to join our global campaign, More Peace, Less AIDS.
Si los gobiernos dejan de movilizar sus tropas para entrenamiento de guerras, ahorran un promedio de 1.4% de su presupuesto.
If governments did not mobilize their troops for war training, they would say about 1.4% of their budgets.
Estos son tan solo dos de los tantos ejemplos que podemos darle si buscamos ampliar nuestra mirada y aportar así una respuesta global más eficaz para detener el SIDA.
These are two of the many examples that we can provide if we want to broaden our outlook and contribute to a more efficient global social response.
En este sentido, se orienta nuestra campaña mundial Más Paz Menos SIDA.
This is what our global campaign, More Peace, Less AIDS, aims at.
Pero, ¿qué es lo que estamos diciendo cuando hablamos de paz en el sector del SIDA?
But what do we mean when we refer to peace in the AIDS sector?
Lo que decimos es que necesitamos paz en nuestros hogares para evitar la violencia familiar.
We need peace in our homes to prevent domestic violence.
Que necesitamos paz en nuestras comunidades para evitar el estigma y la discriminación en nuestros vecindarios.
We need peace in our communities to prevent stigmatization and discrimination in our neighborhoods.
Que necesitamos paz en el mundo para evitar que los ejércitos de ocupación violen a nuestras mujeres, niñas y adolescentes, como nos ha sucedido en países de Asia y África.
We need peace in the world to prevent occupying armies from raping our women, girls and teenagers, as it has happened in Asia and Africa.
Por último, por ello creemos que cuanto más paz tengamos, habremos construido una oportunidad más certera para detener el SIDA.
Therefore, we believe that the more peace there is, the greater the opportunity, the more effective it would be to stop AIDS.
Y por último, aparte de agradecerle a la IAS el esfuerzo que ha hecho para que estemos en esta conferencia y para que cada vez más poblaciones vulnerables estén presentes.
And finally, besides thanking the IAS for its effort and for more populations to be present,
los animamos a todos y queremos decirles que vamos a acompañarlos y esperamos que la próxima conferencia hayamos podido construir mejores alternativas de participación para las poblaciones de diversidad sexual.
We encourage everyone to join us, and for the next conference, we hope that we are able to improve alternatives for the participation of sexually diverse populations.
Podamos haber construido mejores alternativas para que participen mujeres con discapacidad, mujeres migrantes, mujeres indígenas, usuarias de droga, trabajadoras sexuales, la mujer en prisión.
Better alternatives for women with disabilities, for migrating women, indigenous women, drug users, sexual workers, women in prison.
Y por supuesto para ampliar la participación de las mujeres, niñas, adolescentes y jóvenes viviendo con VIH-Sida. Y si logramos esto, estaríamos cumpliendo la premisa de ICW Global, que dice y que refuerza su lema, que es nada para nosotras sin nosotras.
And to add the participation of girls, teenagers and young women living with HIV so that they can accompany us with ICW Global mottos, nothing for us without us.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
We now welcome Ms. Rachel Ong, Chair of the Global Network of People Living with HIV, GNP+.
Apa kabar, that's welcome, and how are you in the language from my region. On Tuesday, for the Human Rights March, my colleagues designed placards with the slogan, I'm HIV positive, so what? Your rights equal my rights. This International AIDS Conference has proved to be a historical moment for AIDS activists, key affected populations, and people living with HIV. Human rights have been intrinsic in many of the sessions and emphasized as an imperative foundation for interventions. For people living with HIV, this conference has had an enormous impact as we have debated the social, political, jurisprudential nightmare that had been created over the years. These are deeply rooted in uninformed discriminations and prejudices experienced and faced by those most vulnerable and marginalized. We need to turn this talk into action. As a community of people living with HIV, we encounter similar situations and prejudices. But it is wrong to assume that we are a homogeneous group. Firstly, we have heard about the rights of young people living with HIV, yet we often lump their issues within the broader community and ignore their specific needs and rights. We must address issues of disclosure, consent, and pediatric treatment for young people living with HIV. This includes their specific needs in relation to sexual and reproductive health and rights, assessing healthcare services, and the transition from adolescence to adulthood as a person living with HIV. Secondly, sex workers, including those living with HIV, are still being arrested and jailed even where there are no laws criminalizing the sale of sex. For sex workers, decriminalization is necessary but will not be sufficient to address discrimination and rights. Compulsory rehabilitation must end, so must raid and rescues. It's time we accepted that sex work is work. Thirdly, harm reduction must be scaled up and accepted by governments across the globe, and especially in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, as an effective and evidence-based strategy to improve the health, dignity, and rights of drug users. Substitution therapy, needle and syringe exchange, and safe injection messages must be made available in all countries to reduce drug-related harm and the spread of HIV and hepatitis C. Harm reduction does work. Lastly, the rights of gay people. Men who have sex with men and transgenders must be recognized and respected. Many countries continue to criminalize these communities, leaving them particularly vulnerable to HIV. We must focus our energies and efforts on advocating for social, cultural, and political change. especially in countries that equate these social identities with homicide. Despite the recent lifting of travel bans in the US, China, and Namibia, 51 countries still impose some form of restriction on the entry, stay, and residence of people living with HIV. Horrifyingly, there are still 22 countries that deport individuals once their HIV-positive status is discovered. And these restrictions need solutions for change. Thus, it is a great step forward for the US to have lifted their travel restrictions for people living with HIV this year. However, for the AIDS 2012 conference in Washington, D.C. to be truly representative and effective, we must ensure that individuals from key affected populations are granted the right to enter the US. GMP Plus on the CCC is very concerned about the current policies that will affect sex workers, people with criminal records, drug users, and anyone that could be denied entry. For AIDS 2012, GMP pledges to support the process to repeal immigration laws that target sex workers and drug users, as well as any others that are prevented entry due to so-called moral reasons. For the reasons above, it is imperative that the International AIDS Society works with the US government to ensure that the representation at AIDS 2012 is credible and that people are not denied their right to participate because of visa and entry issues. Almost 30 years on in the response, we finally have a chance to collectively address the changes necessary to reverse the negative impacts of unsound structural approaches in the response to testing, prevention, treatment, care, and support for people living with HIV and key populations. This is positive health, dignity, and prevention, which is supporting people living with HIV and affected communities to lead in the HIV response, and to ensure that policies and programs are grounded in our realities. These programs will not be in place if donor countries do not and cannot honor their commitments. Those commitments must not be linked to moralistic policies that jeopardize the rights of sex workers, drug users, men who have sex with men, transgender people, migrant workers, and people living with HIV. We must match dollars to cents, and when I mean cents, I mean S-E-N-S-E, so that we can finally and equally match needs to rights. The Global Fund is going through its third voluntary replenishment this year. It is increasingly apparent that we are facing discontinued services, programs, and access to life-saving commodities, especially for treatment, due to the lack of available financial resources to maintain and scale up our responses. This has implications on many middle and upper middle income countries with concentrated epidemics in assessing funding to target interventions for the key affected populations. Nonetheless, the Global Fund must remain global to achieve the health-related MDGs and universal access, to fill the gaps at country level, so that we do not regress in terms of the achievements we have gained so far in the response to AIDS, TB, and malaria. Lastly, I just want to share something that a couple of my friends and I were talking about last night. We concluded that reaching the lounge, which is upstairs, for positive people, can be compared to reaching universal access. It's too far, and we have a long way to go. Especially if you're coming from the Gold Village, it's one metro stop away. At the same time, 2010 is a year not to forget. The universal access goals still need to be met. But realistically, where are we, and what next?
Please join us in welcoming Dr. Julio Montana, Conference Chair of the 18th International AIDS Conference and IAS President.
Thank you, and thank you, Brigitte, for your kind words of introduction. We're coming to the end of a week that I believe can and will change the course of the epidemic. We have heard this week about significant advances in the field of HIV and AIDS. I am particularly pleased with the very promising results of first proof of concept of a vaginal microbicide. This opens the door for a completely new synergistic tool in the HIV prevention. More importantly, this approach has the potential to go a long way towards empowering women and girls in years ahead. We have also seen very compelling data regarding the secondary preventive value of antiretroviral therapy. Expanding HAART coverage among individuals meeting the eligibility criteria recently proposed by WHO will save millions of lives. Equally important, it will save millions of new infections. Treatment as prevention is a true game changer. As MSF likes to say, it will bend all the curves. Further, expanding HAART coverage will have multiple other benefits, including decreasing tuberculosis, decreasing the number of orphans, preserving and strengthening healthcare systems, among others. As such, universal access is the fundamental building block for maternal and child health. Let me say this once more. There cannot be maternal and child health without universal access. In fact, universal access is a prerequisite to deliver each and all of the MDG, Millennium Development Goals. Without universal access, we will have no MDGs. I am particularly thrilled that at this meeting, Michelle Siribe, the Executive Director of UNAIDS, launched the Prevention Revolution and Treatment 2.0, which incorporates the notion that treatment is prevention. Dear friends, I urge you to rally behind Michel as he fights to secure the much-needed support for this bold and ambitious initiative. Throughout this meeting, hundreds of additional presentations have also brought forward the work of thousands of researchers and frontline workers, doctors, nurses, community educators, counselors, policymakers, and funders who have dedicated their lives to the AIDS response. We thank you for your courage, your commitment, and your enthusiasm. This was really contagious and gave Vienna 2010 a unique atmosphere that will live in our memory for a long time. None of the work reported here could have happened without the support, encouragement, and at times the not too subtle pressure of tens of thousands of people living with and at risk for HIV and AIDS. People living with and at risk for HIV are at the center of everything we do. They are our compass, they are our motivation. With them, we will eventually defeat this virus. I also want to acknowledge the fantastic contribution that the conference had on the part of the Global Village. This was one of the most vibrant experiences in Vienna 2010. It was impressive to see, for example, the Eastern European policymakers engaging in open and frank discussions with IDU community activists. Let's hope that this is only the beginning of a new trend. As Vienna 2010 comes to a close, I want to thank in particular the people who have made this conference a success and who have helped ensure that millions of people around the world can also receive and use the information that we share. These include the program committees and working groups, our sponsors, our donors, our conference partners, the conference center and all the suppliers, the conference secretariat in Geneva and Vienna, all the speakers, chairs, moderators, and rapporteurs, and of course, a special and very heartfelt thanks to the yellow sea of volunteers who made everything so incredibly effective. People living with HIV and drug users have used this conference as an important opportunity to reach out to decision makers. They have made their voices heard. Now we must act to make sure that action follows that voice. I want to offer a special thanks to the networks of persons living with HIV and AIDS and drug users groups from the Eastern European community who have seized the opportunity of this conference to engage with policymakers, scientists, and activists from all over the world to draw attention to what is happening in the region. Now we must all continue the work by exposing both the criminalization of injecting drug users in many countries and the abuse of the scientific evidence by governments such as Russia, which after more than 2 decades of epidemic still continue to deny IDUs access to treatment such as methadone. This is simply not acceptable. A decade ago, 100,000 people living with HIV were living with HIV in Eastern Europe. Today, that number is 1 million. Most have contracted HIV through drug use. It is painfully obvious that current policies are not working, and it must be changed urgently. This borders with criminal negligence. I want to acknowledge all of those who have signed and who intend to sign the Vienna Declaration calling for the end of the war on drugs and decriminalization of drug use. The broad support for the Vienna Declaration from across the AIDS movement and the scientific community at this conference sends a strong signal to policymakers regarding the importance of drug policy reform in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Thanks to the First Lady of Georgia, in particular, who signed the declaration, I now want to urge her to shine the light of the Vienna Declaration on the region and become our enthusiastic ambassador to Eastern Europe. I will carry your voices with me when I deliver the Vienna Declaration with all of these many thousands of signatures to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, who, by the way, has already stated that he supports the criminalization of drug users. We trust the Secretary General will use the Vienna Declaration to encourage the entire United Nations system to follow through on its ethical obligation to pursue evidence-based approaches to address the intersecting epidemics of drug addiction and HIV/AIDS. To men who have sex with men and all the LGBT communities who face daily stigma and violence in their lives, I thank you for your bravery and determination to be heard. At this conference, we have seen the first stage of spectacular evidence that we cannot defeat this epidemic without targeted strategies to address the needs of MSMs in any and all programs. Similar evidence was clearly highlighted in the special NIDA session earlier today and the Lancet session related to HIV and IDUs. At the end of the day, we need to address the communities at risk and infected if we are going to address the epidemic effectively. For the millions of women and girls living with and at risk for HIV, we must continue to prioritize the access to treatment, the female-focused prevention tools, and the human rights protection that will be essential to conquer the epidemic. We must make a similar commitment for the infected and affected children, and we must commit to do everything in our power to ensure that this is the last generation impacted by this disease. I want to acknowledge the efforts of the United States, which has been a steadfast partner in the fight against HIV and AIDS. The country's monetary and scientific contribution to the cause have been remarkable. President Obama, your leadership in changing policies that infringe on human rights, including bans on travel and immigration and the recent federal funding for needed exchanges, were long overdue, but they are still most welcome. Now, we ask you to do more to support marginalized groups that have been hard hit by HIV and AIDS, including sex trade workers, and recommit to full funding the universal access. The U.S. has the power to literally change the course of the epidemic. Now is the time to reprioritize the universal access commitment and recommit to an agenda that places health as the #1 priority. As we begin to plan for Washington 2012, we must also recognize that indigenous peoples around the world, including First Nations in Canada, have borne a disproportional and intolerable burden from HIV and AIDS. We have an urgent moral and ethical obligation to address the inequities faced by indigenous people. Today, we stand with indigenous people in demanding that our governments commit to resolving issues of discrimination, cultural disruption, and systemic poverty that led to the spread of HIV in the indigenous communities. Philanthropists and global advocates such as Bill Clinton and Bill Gates have made an enormous difference in the global AIDS response. And we are deeply grateful for their participation here and their work every day of the year to help stop HIV and AIDS. Leaders such as Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu, who could not be here in person, have lent their names, their spirit, and their moral authority to our cause. Gordon Campbell, the leader of my home province, British Columbia, has invested deeply in helping us develop and prove the concept of treatment as prevention, and he deserves our appreciation. France's First Lady, Carla Bruni Sarkozy, has come out as a strong supporter of treatment as prevention and the need to come through on the promise of universal access. We ask her to ensure that her husband, the President of France, becomes a forceful advocate for that position when France hosts the next G8 the next year. We're eternally grateful for the leadership of the political, philanthropic, and spiritual leaders, which has helped to transform the AIDS response. But where are the others? Are these the only political, spiritual, and philanthropic leaders in the world? All world leaders should be here. All should be expressing their solidarity with our cause and fighting to stop AIDS. We are grateful to the people of Austria for having welcomed us. President Fischer spoke eloquently and emotionally at the open ceremony. Mr. President, we thank you for that. Now, please, show us the money. Austria should fund the fund. And then we want you to join us in calling for the rest of your international colleagues to fully fund the Global Fund. I also would like to have a special word of recognition to the Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Stephen Harper, the chair of this year's G8 and G20, and also to his Health Minister, Ms. Leona Aglukkaq, for demonstrating yet again their incredible ability to take credit when none is due. I am ashamed to say that the Government of Canada has punched well below its weight in funding universal access and supporting those affected by HIV and AIDS in Canada and around the world. Progress almost always produces resistance. As we leave here confident that this epidemic can be controlled and can be defeated with humane, evidence-informed, human rights-centered responses, we must also prepare ourselves for the inevitable cry from the international governments. We face a crisis of resources, they will tell us. There is not enough money to do the right things. If we had the money, we would do it. That is simply not true. The challenge is not finding the money, but the challenge is to find the priorities. When there is a Wall Street emergency or an oil spill, billions upon billions of dollars are quickly mobilized. But when there is a need for a rapid response to the global health crisis of HIV and AIDS, people's health deserves a similar response, and yet we cannot find it. As we say farewell to each other and pack our bags to leave Vienna, we must remember that another 7,000 people will become infected today, as they did yesterday, and they will do tomorrow. So let us go back home and pick up where we left, but with the added knowledge and an enthusiasm and the energy that we gained this week. This epidemic is our life work. Let's be sure that we stop this epidemic now. Thank you. Thank you. It is my pleasure now to invite Eli Katabira, incoming president of the International AIDS Society, to join me in the podium. As you know, Eli is a professor of medicine at Makerere University. He's a longtime pioneer in the fight and struggle against HIV and AIDS, an academic of highest reputation, but above all, a fighter. Thank you, Eli. It is our pleasure today to start a new tradition at the International AIDS Society, which is the inaugural IAS Presidential Award. This is presented for the first time during AIDS 2010. It aims to recognize the achievements of an individual who demonstrates a long history of leadership and excellence as a pioneer or advocate at the forefront of the response to HIV and AIDS. The award highlights an individual's contribution that results in increased knowledge, skills, creative solutions, or evidence-based policies and programs to enhance the global response to AIDS. It is my immense pleasure to invite Ambassador Goosby and award winner Dr. Jack Weisgarber to the front. The International AIDS Society honors Dr. Jack Weisgarber, Associate Director for AIDS Research of the National Institute of Health and Director of the NIH Office of AIDS Research, for his truly outstanding commitment to the global fight against HIV and his pioneering work in this field. Let me ask Eli Katabira to read you a few words about Dr. Jack Weisgarber CV. Eli.
Thank you, Uriel. Dr. Jack Weisgarber serves as both the NIH Associate Director of AIDS Research and as a Director of the Office of AIDS Research. He received his doctorate degree in medical microbiology in 1974 from the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, following which he pursued his postdoctoral research at the Harvard School of Public Health. In 1977, Dr. Weisgarber completed a year in the NIH Grants Associate Program and became the Special Assistant to the Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. It was during this tenure that Dr. Weisgarber first reported to the NIAID on the possibility of the emergence of a new infectious disease now known as AIDS, and he helped develop the initial federal response for research on AIDS. In 1988, Dr. Weisgarber was recruited as the Deputy Director of the newly established Office of AIDS Research at the NIH. He served as a acting director of the OER from October 2000 until June 2002, when he was named as its permanent director. During his tenure, he has launched visionary domestic and international research and training initiatives to meet the ever-changing challenges of the epidemic.
Thanks to both our presidents for that very nice introduction. When they pronounced my name, I said, well, that must be me, and that's why I'm on the stage. I am truly honored and indeed humbled and extremely grateful to the International AIDS Society for this very kind award. I've never been someone who sought attention for work. For me, work is its own reward and a deep personal commitment. But I must admit that this award is very touching and meaningful to me. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with a number of Native American tribes. They taught me, amongst many of their traditions, their belief in medicine wheels. A medicine wheel is actually a symbol for the cycle of life that is forever evolving and bringing new lessons and truths. The circle is never ending. For me, and this award represents several parts of my life that have now come full circle. It was nearly 30 years ago at an infectious disease meeting here in Vienna that I first met Peter Piot. And he shared with me his concern about patients he was caring for in the Congo, who exhibited signs of what we now know as AIDS. And in fact, this was the first of the NIH international collaborations in HIV research. And so now I return to Vienna to witness how far we've come in all these years, and that completes one of the circles. In 1985, I was working at Emory University Medical School and helped to plan the first international AIDS conference in Atlanta. That was before founding of the IS. I'm very proud to be standing on this stage for the official announcement that the next IS conference will once again, finally, be held in the United States in 2012 in the nation's capital with the full support of the White House and the United States government. Another circle completed. Some of you may know that not long ago I suffered a heart attack while on an airplane returning to the United States from a trip to India. Thanks to an absolutely terrific pilot, an on-board Hungarian cardiologist, and a lot of luck, I'm here today to receive this special award. For many people, a heart attack might be a wake-up call, and it's time to slow down and take it easy. For me, it's had the opposite effect. Though a wake-up call, it was a reminder that life is short, but that my work and our work is not done. For the past 30 years, I've had the honor to devote my career to finding solutions to the AIDS pandemic. I've had the great privilege to serve with NIH directors and colleagues who have supported me in every way. I've come to know hundreds of activists, patients, community workers who have inspired me. And through it all, I have worked with a dedicated and tireless staff who have stayed with me all the way, many of them for decades. They all share in this award. Last year, you may recall that we in the United States lost one of our greatest supporters, that in the Congress of Senator Edward Kennedy. I'm reminded of something he said that seems particularly appropriate at this time. He said, "The work begins anew. The hope rises again, and the dream lives on." I dream of the day when we will gather to host the very last International AIDS Conference. Thank you for this wonderful award, and thank you to all of you for the work that you are doing to bring us closer to that day. Thank you.
I would like to read a letter from the White House in Washington. I send greetings to those honoring Dr. Jack Weisgarver for his service as Director of the Office of AIDS Research at the National Institute of Health, NIH. Though we have made advances in HIV research, prevention, and care, HIV/AIDS remains an epidemic in America and around the world. I am determined to refocus public attention on this crisis. My administration is committed to reducing the number of new HIV infections and HIV-related health disparities, while also increasing access to and quality of care for patients. Individuals like Dr. Jack Weitscarver have worked vigorously in pursuit of these goals and have transformed our understanding of HIV/AIDS and its effects on populations at most risk. Dr. Weitscarver's leadership has helped NIH create and coordinate HIV treatment guidelines that remain the gold standard for providers. His efforts to mentor young researchers in the United States and abroad have laid the foundation for future generations to confront and conquer this pandemic. As you reflect upon Dr. Weitscarver's career, I hope you are reminded of what we can accomplish when joined in common purpose. I wish you all the best, and thank you for your dedication.
I'm going to invite Eli Katavira, now the President of the International AIDS Society, to give his inaugural address. Eli.
I want to start off by thanking you all who have stayed behind to witness this historic day. And in particular, I want to thank my African members of the International AIDS Society. You did elect me to join the Ghana Governing Council in the year 2000, another historical day. Then you also re-elected me in 2004 to continue with what you called a good work. Now I also want to thank the members of the Governing Council who did elect me in 2008 to become the President-elect, leading to my becoming the President of the International AIDS Society today. I thank you all. Like any typical day of this type, when it was announced in 2008 that I was going to become the President-elect, many people have asked me questions related to what I want to do during my presidency. In many of those, I never answered anything, mainly because the right question was never asked. I wanted to be asked a question which would challenge me, and that question would be, what would you not be wanted to be remembered at the end of your presidency? For those, and particularly from Africa, you love football, you are aware the past concluded World Cup on the 11th of July. During that World Cup, in one quarter-final, there was a lot on stake for Africa. Many of you remember that 3 minutes to the end of this extra time, Ghana, representing Africa, was awarded a penalty. For many of us who had been dreaming of a day when Africa would be represented in the semifinals, we stood up and put our hands in the air, particularly when we saw Asamoah Gyan walking to the spot to score. We knew he was going to score because he had scored other important goals. The rest is history, and you know what happened. That young man doesn't want to be remembered by that action. Similarly, I don't want to be remembered as the president who took office and saw the decline of universal access to HIV care in sub-Saharan Africa. When Pedro Khan took over the office in 2006 in Toronto, it was at the end of the World Health Organization 3x5 campaign. We were supposed to have had 3 million people on treatment by the end of 2005. It didn't happen, but certainly there were more people in Africa who were put on treatment, from 400 in 2003 to close to 1 million. When Julio took over in Mexico in 2008, we had actually done better. Our percentage had reached more than 35. And today, as I take on, it is close to 50%. We have about 4 million people on treatment, even though about 10 million still needed the treatment. So I don't want to be remembered as somebody who saw the decline of access to care. I should know this. For the last 25 years, I've been providing care to HIV-infected people. In 1987, when I started an AIDS clinic, patients would sit in front of me, and I would diagnose that they had AIDS because they had all the classical signs and symptoms. We had no ability to do HIV testing. So they would ask me, "Doctor, what's wrong with me?" And I would say with confidence that you've got AIDS. Then the patient would ask me, "So doctor, I'm going to die." And I lower my voice and say, "No, you are not going to die." But the patient would know that I'm not confident with my answer because of the blinking within my eyes. Over the years, similar questions have been asked, and I've gained confidence in responding that you don't need to die because there are interventions as long as you obey the regulations and guidelines provided to you by your healthcare worker. And that's what I want to continue doing for the rest of my days. But to do that, is beyond my ability as a Katawira, my ability as the president of the International AIDS Society. It depends a lot on you. Many of you in this conference, even everybody has talked about urging the donors to give us more. I will continue to do that. There's no doubt about that. But I want to go beyond that. I know from experience that there is a lot more we can do with what we have today. For those who come from sub-Saharan Africa, you are aware that in 1997, the heads of states of Africa region, member states of Afro, committed themselves to provide at least 15% of their annual budget to health care. Very few have done that. We also know that there is a lot we can do as our leaders in guiding the people who are taking care of patients to provide better care and use the resources we need. When I talk about leaders, many of you think of the leaders within the state houses. That is true. Those people are extremely important. They represent us wherever they go, and we are the ones who elected them. But the other leaders, and many of you on this hall, I'll tell you why I think you are as important as the leader in the State House. When I started taking care of HIV-infected patients, there was very little in Uganda which I could use. I knew there were no drugs. Even the shortages we had at that time are still existing. But we were able to start an AIDS clinic in 1987, which by the year 2002 had more than 1,800 people attending. Today, there are more of those. How did I do it when I didn't have all the funds and the support I needed? I made sure that I motivated everybody to be interested in HIV care. I trained people, I talked to church leaders, the mosques, and so on, to encourage them to be more concerned about the plight of HIV-infected people. You can do the same. We also know that when we hear stories that patients, and it's happened in Uganda, that patients are being sent away because there are no drugs, it may not necessarily mean that there are no drugs at that point, because those drugs may still be in the stores. Why? Because they have not been able to be moved from point A to point B. That's where your leadership comes in. Talk to your leaders in the ministries of which are relevant, Minister of Health, Minister of Finance, local government, and extra, and take them to task and say, look, how come my unit in the village where I live, there are no drugs? And then they will be able to explain next time you ask them. That's what I'm asking you to do. I can't do it alone, but with you, I'm sure we will win. Please, you are leaders, we are all leaders, and we need to take action. Thank you very much. From now, we move to Washington, D.C. By tradition, the president of the International Society is the international co-chair of that conference. But there is always the local co-chair. And I would like to introduce to you now our local co-chair who's going to take care of us when we go to Washington, D.C., Dr. Diane Havering.
Thank you very much, Ellie. I'm so looking forward to working with you and all of you for the next 2 years. I do first want to offer my sincere congratulations to Julio Montaner and Brigitte Schmidt for a magnificent conference here in Vienna, truly a landmark in the AIDS epidemic. Here we saw developments such as CAPRISA, debates on treatment as prevention, and the Vienna Declaration. We certainly have big shoes to fill in future meetings. But more importantly, we have so much work to be done until we gather again in 2 years. And I ask you, whether you're looking at your cell phone right now, whether you're part of the youth movement, whether you're carrying a camera, we all need to work together and recruit more crusaders to carry on what we need to do in the AIDS epidemic. It gives me such great pride to announce the 19th International AIDS Conference will be held in Washington, D.C. The last conference in the United States was in 1990 in San Francisco, where I've worked and lived for many years. The AIDS community and I are excited to welcome you in the conference back to the United States, not just to share in the rich history of leadership and science on HIV and AIDS, but also as we learn best practices from our own colleagues from around the world. As co-chair of AIDS 2012, we will carry forward the priorities established here in Vienna, including a firm commitment to universal access, the prevention revolution as outlined by Michelle Sidibe, and a human rights agenda which includes all populations. No other fields unite such a diverse array of leaders across scientific and community and political fields on such a grand scale. We are proud and committed to work all of you in the coming years as we strive towards our common goal of understanding and mitigating the effects of and ultimately conquering HIV and AIDS. This welcome and commitment, a very strong commitment to AIDS, comes from myself and the highest levels of the United States government. Now I am proud to introduce the following video messages from Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton and Barack Obama, President of the United States of America.
Greetings, and thank you for your efforts in the global fight against HIV/AIDS. Together, we have mounted one of the greatest public health responses in history. Through your tireless efforts, we have begun to halt and reverse the epidemic, and millions of lives have been saved. The United States, working through PEPFAR and the Global Fund, is the largest contributor to global AIDS programs, and we're committed to leading the fight against HIV/AIDS as we seek a sustainable, effective, and broad response to the global burden of disease. PEPFAR is the cornerstone of our global health initiative and offers support to countries in meeting the broad health needs of their people. We are focused on reducing the impact on families and communities when the virus claims women of reproductive age, passes from mother to child, or is spread through gender-based violence. And we believe access to HIV/AIDS prevention, treatment, and care should be a universal shared responsibility because health is a human right. As we push to expand access to these resources, the United States will continue to work with our partner countries and with civil society to help empower citizens to lead the charge in their own countries. We look forward to hosting you at the 2012 conference in Washington, D.C. Together, we will continue this important work. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody, and greetings to all of you who are taking part in the 18th International AIDS Conference in Vienna. As President, I've directed my administration to redouble our efforts to prevent and treat HIV/AIDS, both here in America and around the world. That's why, even in a tough fiscal environment, I've asked for increases to PEPFAR in both my budgets, 2011 being the largest PEPFAR budget to date. We've also embedded it in a comprehensive global health initiative to help other countries improve healthcare, save lives, and increase life expectancy. The Global Health Initiative, or GHI, has set clear goals to get this done. We're going to double the number of babies born HIV-free and work to prevent more than 12 million new infections. We'll provide direct support to more than 4 million people on treatment and will help more than 12 million people, including 5 million children and orphans, get the care they need. I'm also committed to ending the HIV epidemic here in the United States. More than 56,000 Americans become infected with HIV every year. A large percentage of those cases are concentrated in a few communities, including gay and bisexual men, African Americans, Latinos, and substance abusers. That's why my administration released a national HIV/AIDS strategy that increases our focus on reducing the number of new infections in these high-risk groups and making our entire nation healthier. Our strategy also involves increasing access to care, reducing HIV-related health disparities, and improving coordination across the government and the private sector. Ending this pandemic won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But thanks to you, we've come a long way, and the United States is committed to continuing that progress. Thank you for your hard work and dedication, and I look forward to welcoming all of you to Washington, D.C. in July 2012.
Now, please join us in welcoming Wahida Shabazz El from the United States to the podium. Ms. Shabazz El is a founding member of the U.S. Positive Women's Network, National Organizer for CHAMP, Community Advisory Board Chair for Penn Center for AIDS Research, and a long-term member of ACT UP Philadelphia.
Thank you. I want to start by honoring the Creator for what has been created here, and I'm truly humbled by this incredible opportunity. And I want to thank the City of Vienna, acknowledge all of the dignitaries, my colleagues, and friends. This 18th International Conference has been a true testament to what we can accomplish when we share a mission. Even as we explored evidence on prevention, funding for universal access, and value of the early treatment for HIV and AIDS, our mutual strategy is to press forward in our fight for human rights and against the devastating impact of HIV and AIDS. Commonly, we aspire to live in a world free from stigma, and discrimination irrespective of who we are, where we come from, or what we believe in. This is a great challenge, but I strongly believe that we can get there through our collective power. We have gathered here in order to take on the shared responsibility of delivering on our commitment to universal access to prevention, treatment, care, and support to all those who need it. We have examined both our successes and our failures, and by doing so, we have strengthened each other. Collectively, we have reaffirmed that human rights and HIV prevention justice are the cornerstones of our universal response to HIV and AIDS. Around the world, we face systemic human rights violations. Globally, women and girls face daily struggles against violence, inequality, violations of sexual and reproductive rights, such as forced sterilizations, criminalization of sex work, and HIV transmission. Around the world, we can't deny that HIV travels the well-worn path of gender inequality. But I envision a world where this inequality no longer exists, where the human rights of women are consciously upheld. As your positive sister, in this world, I have witnessed inequality, discrimination, and injustice. Now with you by my side, I am no longer alone and marginalized. As you stand here with me today, I can feel change, and I say yes to human rights here, right now. Moving forward, can our lessons bring real victories? We must meaningfully involve women and girls living with HIV in all aspects of policy making, program development, implementation, and monitoring. And we need properly resourced programs that address the realities of our lives. We must accurately capture data on the social and economic factors that lead to increased vulnerability and worse health outcomes for women and girls in all our diversity, including transgender women. We must end the criminalization and violation of the rights of women living with HIV, especially for those women behind bars, women who use drugs, and sex workers. And we must support responses that address inequality and violence against women in all regions, irrespective of the type of epidemic. For all people, we have to ensure that communities are able to access HIV education, prevention, testing, and counseling services that meet their needs. And we must eliminate all funding for abstinence-only programs that fail young people by violating their rights to life-saving information. All people with HIV have the right to work, to have full and satisfying sexual lives, to bear children, and access high-quality HIV care that meets their needs. Let us now look to the future. In 2 years, we welcome you to our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. Please understand that you will be coming to a country that is still very much a work in progress when it comes to addressing HIV and AIDS within our own borders. We will require your support to end the AIDS crisis both inside and beyond our borders. No one person or country has all the answers. We all have much to learn. But I am proud that for the first time, the United States has developed its own national strategy, something our previous government felt was not a priority. Another win is that Congress has finally voted that federal dollars can be used to support needle exchange programs. This is a vote for human rights, a vote for evidence-based protection, and a powerful reminder that clean needles save lives. Also, under the leadership of President Barack Obama, my country has finally lifted its outrageous travel ban on HIV-positive people entering the country. This makes it possible for the 19th International AIDS Conference to return to the United States after a 23-year absence. However, it disturbs me that two of the most vulnerable populations, sex workers and drug users, will not be allowed to legally enter the United States to participate in the International AIDS Conference 2012 in Washington, D.C. We face many more difficulties in the United States. We witness more and more people being placed on waiting lists for life-saving ARVs. We have enormous wealth, but many people, including those with HIV, are homeless. 1 in 4 persons living with HIV in the United States is estimated to spend time behind bars each year. More than half of all African American men who have sex with men are HIV positive. And every 9.5 minutes, a person is infected with HIV, disproportionately people of color and women. In fact, over 60% of all new infections diagnosed in women are among women of color, and primarily African American women. In my country, infections through all modes of transmission have increased, and overall HIV prevalence in Washington, D.C. is higher than some countries with the severest epidemics. Stigma is very much alive. The rights of people with HIV are routinely violated, and our religious leaders are just beginning to understand their role in this epidemic. Please understand that you will be coming to a country that needs your assistance. Bearing in mind these challenges, let us affirm our commitment to the work we must achieve during the next 2 years, wherever we live. When we reconvene in 2 years, we must be able to declare that we stood by our commitments to reach universal access and kept HIV on the global agenda as a human rights imperative. That we ensured that HIV remained amongst the highest funding priorities for our leaders. That we continue to educate and support people with HIV to advocate for themselves and their communities. That we created spaces and programs at decision-making tables for women and girls living with HIV. And my sisters, we must be able to declare that we have prepared ourselves to assume those roles. That we mentored young people and supported their leadership. And that we have provided information about HIV and AIDS regardless of language or access to technology. We have our work cut out for us. Right now, as we end this conference, let us resolve to greet Washington, D.C. with unforeseen strength born out of the vows echoed here, right now. This fight is not over. It's just beginning, and from Vienna's shores to Washington, D.C., we will hold each other and our elected leaders to their obligations and their promises to fight HIV and AIDS around the world. On behalf of the United States Positive Women's Network, a local host partner for 2012, I welcome you to Washington, D.C. in 2012. Please let me thank Philadelphia Fight, CHAMP, the International Community of Women Living with HIV Global, United States Positive Women's Network, ACT UP Philadelphia, Penn CFAR, the Conference Coordinating Committee for inviting me to speak here today, my family back at home, and for each and every one of you who have traveled so far to attend this conference. I pray your travels home are safe, and may peace be with you. Diane, could you come back to the podium?
Thank you for those wonderful words. Now I'd like to, and looking forward to 2012, welcome the U.S. delegation up to the stage.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Bryant, and I'm a native Washingtonian. I am African American, heterosexual, and HIV positive since 1986. My hometown of DC has an extraordinary opportunity as host city for the next International AIDS Conference. As a stage and backdrop of the U.S. epidemic and its response, we have a unique and challenging task to set a global standard. Before that can happen, however, the District of Columbia, currently led by Mayor Adrian Fenty, has a severe mess of an epidemic to address. If you have been to the Washington, D.C. booth here in Vienna, in the exhibition hall, you have seen the images of bright, shiny faces in middle-class D.C. strolling across the National Mall. Those images are in sharp contrast to the D.C. I know and call home. Devastating poverty, rising living and survival costs, and underfunded, under-resourced, and overwhelmed community-based organizations have contributed to an HIV avalanche of epidemic proportions. 3% or of all of Washington, D.C.'s residents, or 220,000 individuals, are HIV infected, 75% of which are African American. Severely reduced funding has either been cut or eliminated prevention, education, care, and service programs to women, young people, drug users, and the mentally ill. Also, over 700 D.C. residents living with AIDS are on waiting lists for safe and supportive housing. How dare we in the nation's capital, the capital of the free world, allow those most marginalized and most in need to go without? What kind of an example does that set for us and for all? Mayor Fenty and our city's leaders must do better. Mayor Fenty, if you do not implement a comprehensive plan to end DC's HIV epidemic at the 2012 International AIDS Conference, we will shame you. I am also proud to represent the United States, which has one of the planet's most diverse populations. We are a tapestry woven through over 200 years of perseverance, passion, and persistence. Yet despite our history, or maybe because of it, we allow social justice to drive painful wedges between us. Racism and homophobia, particularly in the South, are almost an acceptable and encouraged norm. Sexual violence, violence against women and transgender individuals goes unseen and unheard. Inequities in education, criminalization, and access lead to disparities in health, resources, and hope. These deficits must be meaningfully addressed if we are truly to end this epidemic. The Obama HIV and AIDS National AIDS Strategy must be more ambitious. Right now, over 2,500 individuals wait for life-saving or life-extending medications across the country that they cannot afford. At this rate, many will die even before the National AIDS Strategy is even implemented. We must fully fund and end the AIDS drug waiting list once and for all. We must also implement a plan to improve access to quality care, particularly in rural communities. President Obama, if you do not truly set ambitious goals for your National HIV strategy, we will shame you at the 2012 International AIDS Conference in Washington, D.C., in your backyard. We as a community have much to do to prepare for the conference in D.C. and certainly delivering accountability. And I'm looking forward to that chance. Thank you.
Thank you. We are certainly behind you and should be in solidarity for access and care for all. And we look forward to seeing the progress in Washington, D.C., which I know we are all determined to deliver. Now I'd like to thank our Austrian hosts for the wonderful meeting they have allowed all of us to participate in and come up to the podium as we go through the ceremonial changing of the IAS globe.
Wait,
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to now it's yours.
So thank you, and we will see you in D.C.
Where big things happen every day. A place with over 219 years of history, filled with the diversity of over 179 embassies. A place where 5-star restaurants and over 29,000 hotel rooms live next to museums and monuments. A place easy to get to, easy to get around in, providing 3 local airports easily accessible by Railway Hub and a world-class public transportation system. A place that is truly the heart of the nation. Washington, D.C.